What is up everyone, Movie Worm back again with another review roundup. This is just me giving some mini reviews on movies that weren't too much on my radar, or films that I've just seen, you know, that I missed earlier in the year or whatever. And I've got 6 movies to talk about here today. There's going to be another 1 or 2 of these videos towards the end of the year because I'm trying to review every single movie that I watched in 2021. And we've got a couple of cinema releases here and a couple that I watched, you know, on streaming. So let's just get into it with the first movie, Westside Story. Now, I'm not usually a big musical person. In fact, it's my least favourite genre. But after watching La La Land last month for the first time and really enjoying it, and this being Spielberg and his take on a classic tale and one of the best musicals known about, I thought I'd give it a go. First off, I really got into this story, which I'm not too familiar with. I have never seen the original or the stage show. And this tells the story of 2 gangs going at it over some territory on the streets of New York. We also have a massive love story thrown into the mix when one of the gang's ex-leaders falls in love with the other leader's sister. It was a simple concept that worked for me, with characters feeling so passionate about their turf and dedicating their lives to it all. It seemed kind of daft that this is how would you live your life, but I do think there's a bit of satire involved, as we all know as a viewer watching this that it's absolutely pathetic that these gangs are willing to die for this little neighbourhood they come from. The characters are awesome too, especially Mike Feist as Riff, who has this really screeched New York accent, but kind of owned every scene he was in. Ansel Elgort and Rachel Zegler also had great chemistry on screen as the movie's central focus. You really do want a happy outcome for them, and they are characters you root for as they see the daftness like the viewer in what's going on around them and their families involving these gang wars. However, the bread and butter of this movie is the music. I really got into some of the songs here and some of these dance scenes and the routines they were going on, and I have to just admit that I'm starting to warm to this genre now. I like musicals now. But it was just, my favourite ones were to see these gangs, actually these tough guys, you know, just dancing around the streets. It was just so fun to see. But overall, I thought the music was great in this. There was 1 or 2 that didn't really hit with me, but these are definitely the best parts about West Side Story, and so they should be. I do have a bit of problem with the cinematography though. Now, I know this was probably intended by Spielberg to have this movie look like it was on a film set and be very noticeable to the viewer. I mean, I doubt he would make it look like this obvious, as it's fucking Steven Spielberg. He's a master of the craft. And the fact that this is a stage show definitely implies that he has done this on purpose, but it honestly was a bit of a risk, I feel. And for me personally, it didn't pay off, but I can see why fans of the show would like this approach. The third act did seem to drag a little bit too. I think this movie could have been cut by about 15 or 20 minutes, and I think it would have been better paced overall. Also, there's a lot of Puerto Rican, you know, gangs in this speaking Spanish, and I just would have preferred some subtitles. I don't mind it now and again, but it happens a lot during the movie, and I just kept wondering what the hell they were saying. However, Spielberg is one of the best and most consistent directors of all time, not to mention one of the greatest, and West Side Story is a great addition to his filmography. I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. Next up, we have Finch, and this tells the story of Tom Hanks, who plays a character called Finch, and he decides to build a robot in a post-apocalyptic world, so when he dies, this robot can look after his pet dog. This was a very heartwarming, simple enough and effective movie. The only characters we really see for nearly the whole time are a human robot and a dog, and I think they got the casting with Tom Hanks here spot on. If I'm going to watch one actor stroll around a wasteland for a couple of hours interacting with these other 2 characters, I'm probably going to want that person to be Tom Hanks. The man is a perfect actor. I mean, he's just top tier, isn't he? Everything is effortless to him, and Finch is no exception, portraying a man who is coming to the end of his life, and he knows it. And because it's Tom Hanks just alone here, people are saying that this movie reminded them of Castaway, and instead of Wilson, it's his dog, mixed with Wall-E being the robot. But I kind of didn't see that. What this reminded me most of is Castaway with Chappie, because of the hilarious personality that the robot in this movie had. I mean, Hanks is good, but this thing called Jeff, voiced by Caleb Landry Jones, was the biggest positive of this entire film for me. He's a character who is always learning the ways of the world, but he kind of has the brain of a child. And it was so funny to see some of the silly things he does in this movie. Not to mention the brilliant dialogue between Jeff and Hanks too, which is definitely the heartbeat of the film. It kind of relies on that, and it all worked. There was some comedic back and forth, but Hanks teaching him the way of life and Jeff not quite grasping it always made it funny but interesting as the movie goes on, and Jeff started to understand his purpose more. It's a very well written script. Having these comedic elements isn't something you see every day in a post-apocalyptic film, because it's always more of a serious tone, but it actually really worked, and it just fitted the movie really well, actually, better than I thought it would. However, that's about it, and as good as a film this is, it felt like a movie that just wanted to do that. I wouldn't say there were any impactful scenes or too many great memorable moments. It just carried a steady story throughout and played it a little safe, I feel. I know you can't expect too much from a film with very little characters, but this has been done before plenty of times and has worked wonders. But Finch just missed the mark a little bit in that department. However, this was a pretty solid 2021 movie and I had a great time. I'm going to give Finch a 7.5 out of 10. Next up, we have the latest A24 film, Lamb, and this focuses on farm life with this couple who don't have a child and they see a lamb give birth in their farmhouse and they decide to keep it as their own. Now, when I saw the trailer for this, that synopsis was basically everything I thought this movie was going to be. However, I was taken aback to discover that it was a little bit more than that, and I really didn't expect to get what I saw. All the way through this movie, I just kept guessing as to what the real reason everything was happening for. The couple are also visited by this strange family member, and you keep wondering what his role in the movie is meant to be. It's a very mysterious film, and I just didn't have any idea where it was going to go. It's very cleverly done with scenes just hanging on to its shots and letting you have a quick intake of what the story is trying to say before moving on to the next scene. And when the story was nearing its climax and then the ending eventually happened, my head exploded. I was just like, whoa, what the hell was that? That was insane. And it was a very satisfying ending, even though I was left with a ton of questions still. This has your typical A24 feel to it. I mean, I can tell it's the same company a mile off when compared to a ton of their other movies. And I feel like a lot of them, coincidentally or not, seem to carry the same type of tone. Noomi Rapace also gives notably a great performance here. I loved her in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and she just has this very unique look about her, and she fitted into this role of this mother with a strange child really well. I do feel like Lamb may require a few rewatches. It's a simple enough story, but on the other hand, a lot of weird shit is thrown in, and there are some haunting scenes on screen with the imagery. But for now, I'm going to give Lamb a 7.5 out of 10. Next up, we have Ron's Gone Wrong, and this is a really heartwarming tale about Barney, who is the only person in school without the latest high-tech must-have thing, a talking robot that finds you friends. And friendless Barney finally gets one called Ron, who's definitely a whole lot different from what he is meant to be. Now, this movie carries a strong social media message. This robot acts like a phone, basically, where it's constantly notifying you that you've got messages and notifications and you need to look at this damn thing. I think it got the message across really well, actually. It kind of reminded me of The Mitchells vs. The Machines, another 2021 film that carries the same social media message. Mainly though, this is a story about friendship, with Barney and Ron blossoming together as the film goes on, learning the errors of each other's ways and finding a true understanding of each other and themselves. They are destined to be best buds, but what I think Ron's Gone Wrong does really well is that the message of important friendship is more than talking to a stranger from the internet on a phone screen. The people around you are the ones who they should be put first. The movie delivers its message well, and I think it's great for youngsters to see this and take it on board. The movie provides many funny and entertainment moments as well. It's got great humour in there, and that works with its dialogue and also its animation. Its animation is part of that. Now, it's not as good looking as something like, let's say, Pixar throw out there, but that is absolute top tier. But it's a really strong looking movie anyway. But what animated movie isn't these days. I'm going to give Ron's Gone Wrong an 8 out of 10. Next up we have Army of Thieves, a prequel to Army of the Dead. Now I know this is a really late review, but I wanted to watch it before the year ends and give my thoughts, so better late than never. This tells the story of Sebastian, who goes on to name himself Ludwig, a professional safecracker. Yes, it's that guy from Army of the Dead who cracks safes, who is recruited by a group of thieves to attempt a top secret heist. It was strange to just see this come out of nowhere just a couple of months after Army of the Dead was released. I mean, Netflix trying to make their own franchise here and make this as big as it can be? Who knows? Now, Ludwig was one of the few characters in Army of the Dead who I didn't really latch onto. He was actually one of my least favourites. Maybe that's because he was such in a big crowd there with big personalities, but here I warmed to him a lot more. He was fun to be around, and you can tell deep down he's a really good person who commits robberies. In fact, I thought this group of 5 characters were all quite interesting. Having a smaller number than the load we'd had in Army of the Dead really allowed the movie to let these characters breathe, and as a viewer find out more about them and their personalities. There's an on-screen romance between Ludwig and Natalie Emmanuel's character though that I wasn't quite feeling, if I'm being honest. There was enough between them to convince me that this just wasn't happening. It's just there because of the unwritten rule that almost every movie has to have a romance story. I did enjoy the banter and comedic dialogue the group had between them now and again though. What struck me the most though is how different this felt to Army of the Dead. Like I said, this is a prequel and there are hardly any zombies in this film. They are both heist movies, but having the zombies in one of them just give it a totally different feel. The only zombies we do see here are when the TV screen comes on and we see like reports from America that an outbreak has occurred. But I think this is a very good idea because if you did have the zombies in this, it just feel like the same movie really. And the heists are by far Army of Thieves' greatest trait, especially the first one, but there's 3 or 4 here overall, and I thought they were so well edited and intriguing to see the group's plan come about. Ludwig always being nervous before going into one of these heists just added to the fun factor as well. I may have given this movie a bigger score, but I do feel like the third act kinda let it down a little bit and seemed to drag a little. It's not bad, but the first 2 acts are the best parts of this film for sure. But I'm going to give Army of the Dead a 7 out of 10. Next up is The French Dispatch, and this is a movie from Wes Anderson, who is a director a lot of people hold in very high regard. Regrettably, I have only seen The Grand Budapest Hotel and the fantastic Mr. Fox, and I know he's made way more movies than that. So you could say I was a bit of a neutral going into this one. And this tells not 1, but 3 stories that have been published in a famous French magazine called The French Dispatch. Now, the first thing that did actually stand out to me here was Wes Anderson's filmmaking. This felt so unique to me and probably not to fans of his, to be honest, but when comparing him to lots of other directors, he is definitely different. With the directing, editing and cinematography thrown together here, you simply have a movie that is like no other and fascinating to watch. The film feels so quirky at times as the dialogue and character interactions also seem to flow with what the movie is going for. Anderson is also known for using big casts, and every man, woman and dog show up here. There's lots of famous actors and actresses, and some great performances to be honest, but I thought Adrian Brody was the standout. He doesn't have the most screen time or anything, but I feel like he was the most interesting character, and he's mainly in the first story and has some of the best scenes in the film. Getting on to the story, or these 3 stories should I say, the first one is definitely the standout, about an artist played by Benicio del Toro. This is where The French Dispatch had my attention the most, but even towards the end of this one, I was honestly struggling to keep up and hold my attention to it. And that only increased as the movie went on. It didn't help with the second and third stories being nowhere near as good as the first, and in fact being quite dull and uninteresting. And then it just started to pick up pace like a steam train, and I just honestly couldn't keep up. Now, I don't know if it's this style of filmmaking that I'm just not quite used to, but I had to admit to myself in the end that The French Dispatch probably just wasn't for me. I was actually really excited to check this film out. I was actually down about missing it at the cinema. I wanted to love this. I know there's probably a great film in there, And it hasn't put me off Wes Anderson at all. In fact, I really like the Grand Budapest Hotel, but maybe a rewatch of this may suffice. However, on the other hand, I have heard even the biggest of his fans say that this isn't his greatest, which kind of gave me a sigh of relief on a personal level, to be honest, as I'm still intrigued to check out the likes of the Royal Tenenbaums and Isle of Dogs, etc. But the French Dispatch just didn't cut the mustard for me, unfortunately, which is a shame because it has such a cool and unique style. But I'm going to give this film a 5.5 out of 10. Okay guys, I hope you all enjoyed this review roundup. There will be one or two more of these coming in the next week or two. Just rounding off all the films I haven't seen yet. And I have 5 left on my list that I really want to check out. But there's another 3 in the works that I have already seen going into the next video. So look out for that. So thank you so much everyone. Take it all easy. I'll see you all in the next video.